What's going on, guys? So this week's review has been cancelled, so what I thought I would do, I've seen it on a few other channels, so I thought, well, I may as well add it to my channel. It's quite a good idea, but I thought I'd give you a quick kind of brief rundown of my car history. So when I actually sat down and worked out how many cars I've actually owned since I started driving, it was in excess of 90 vehicles, yeah? Not 19, but 90 vehicles I've actually owned. So instead of running through them all, because a lot of them were crappy old bangers, like, because I usually have a second car anyway, I've kind of narrowed it down to like my top 15, nearly 20 odd cars that I could tell you about, and I've got a little story behind them. So it all started when I was about 7 or 8 years old in Alpha Sud. Yes, my mum used to own one of these cars, and the only way that she could get me to go food shopping with her was she said that she would let me change gear in the car. So I used to sit in the passenger seat and I used to change gear for her, and that's the only way she could get me to go food shopping with her, to help her. So she kind of bribed me, but it kind of got me into the car kind of thing, you know. I really enjoyed like changing the gears. I thought it was really cool for somebody my age. And I used to go to school and say, yeah, my mum let me change gear in the car, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so I actually learned how to drive, like to control the car with the pedals and so on and so forth, in an orange Vauxhall Chevette. What it was, I must have been about 10 or 11, and my friend at school at the time, they used to own a farm, and his dad had the car knocking about on the farm. He didn't use it on the road, just used it for driving about on the farm, and he taught us how to drive it, and we used to just knock about going up and down the farm in the car, and that's how I learned to actually drive. I think it's a 4-speed Vauxhall Chevette, but you know, learned how to do the clutch and drive it myself, and I was driving. I think I was ready for the road by when I was about 12 years old. So my first legal car was a Nissan Cherry Turbo. I think it was on an A-Reg. It was about a 1985 model, and I absolutely loved that car. I know when you look at it, it looks awful, but I think at the time it was like 130 horsepower, and 130 horsepower in a car that weighs as much as a matchbox. Back then in the late 80s, early 90s, was it was quite a thing. I mean, it was embarrassing XR3s at the time, and it was keeping up with RS turbos and all that kind of thing, and I really loved that car, but my god, wasn't it ever a rust bucket. Yeah, so fast forward a few years and a few crappy cars. I had I then got hold of a BMW, a 635 CSI. I loved that car, but then I got put off of it because my girlfriend at the time, who I was seeing, she turned around and says, you look like a right cock driving that car. And I was like, what? But that kind of put me off. But I remember I used to drive back, seat was back, window was down, music was playing. I remember I even had house speakers in the back of that car, some like 12-inch bloody speakers from my house. So yeah, I used to drive around like at 5 miles an hour so everyone could see you. But when she said that to me, I kind of reflected and looked back at myself, and I thought, maybe she's right. So anyway, I got rid of that car, and I got rid of her about a week later. But then after that one, I had I think it was a G-Reg BMW 325i convertible with a switchable auto, and it was my first convertible car that I ever had, and also my last. But it was all right, don't get me wrong. I did like the car, and at the time it seemed like it was quite a fast car, and oh, it was good actually in the summertime. Yeah, just cruising around town. So I lived in London now. I'm from London originally, but just cruising around town. My afro was blowing in the wind, and yeah, some good times back then, honestly. After the BM, it was the Renault 5, the GT Turbo. I had a red one. And I gotta say, I had a big love-hate relationship with this car. I loved it so much because it was just like the ultimate pocket rocket, but I hated it for all the problems it gave me. I went through 2 engines, I've done 2 bottom ends in it and 3 turbos. But I still always persevered with the car. That's how much I loved it. I thought it was, oh man, I used to embarrass so many cars in that little car there. And I've even been looking for one contemplating maybe getting one to relive those kind of memories again, but I don't know. After I blew the third turbo in the 5, thought, oh, that's it, I've had enough of that, and I swapped it for an Astra GTE 16 valve, and oh man, that was another car which I also loved, and I thought, because it had a digital dash layout and everything, and when you turned it on, all the digital thing, everything lit up and all that, and it's like, eh. But I did have a bad ending with that car. Let's just say I was having a spirited drive with my friend who had an 8 valve GTE, and I was in the fast lane on the motorway, and the bonnet decided to open. Well, you may as well just have put a blindfold on me and said, all right, there you go, drive at your spirited speed with a blindfold on, and let's see what happens. So after the GTE, I got an Escort XR3i, and that was probably one of the worst mistakes in my car owning history. I owned the car for 2 months, and I got pulled by the police 5 times in 2 months. 5 times. And the XR3s and the RS turbos and all that time were getting stolen left, right and centre, because the Cosworths were out then, and they were like a dime a dozen as well. And so, you know, they obviously automatically thought, bet he's stolen that car, let's give him a pull and see what happens. So yeah, 2 months I had the car for, and I got pulled enough times in it, I said, nah, get rid of it. But then stupidly, after the XR3, I got an XR4, right? But you know what? I had no problems with the police in that car at all. Didn't get touched once in it. So, and it was all right. It was a big car for the time. I think it was a 2.8 or 2.9 injection engine, and obviously at the time the Cosworths were out with the big whale tail things, and the XR4i had the whale tail as well. So, but you know, you always got branded as a poor man's Cosworth kind of thing. And so then fast forward a couple of years from that, and I started to get into the Japanese stuff quite heavily again. And so I had a Nissan Pulsar GTIR, and at the time it felt like the fastest thing going. So it carried the SR20 DET engine, which is still running nowadays. And it's quite a strong engine, but in the Pulsar, the gearbox was the weak link. And yeah, it's safe to say, as soon as I hiked up the power in the car, yeah, the gearbox did go. And I didn't really appreciate the car for what it was. They're selling for quite good money now, and they're rare as rocking horse doo-doo. So fast forward again a few years, and I managed to get my first Evo 6. I had a Reims blue one, and oh man, I love that car. I love that thing. It was pushing about 400 and 400 around that, and yeah, man, oh man, I love my Evos. So then after that, I got a Mazda 323 GTR, which is also it was at the time, even then, it was a very rare car. You hardly see them about, and I had to put it in the same kind of league as the Pulsar, but it was actually a stronger block, and the gearbox and all that was actually stronger than the Pulsar. I've done a little bit of work to it. You hardly ever saw those things about. I think when I owned that Mazda, I saw two more of them on the road. I ended up selling it to a family member, and they wrecked it. And I wish I kept it actually, because it was, as I say, it's a very rare car. It wasn't the best looking of cars, but it was very rare, and it went like the clappers. So after the Mazda, I got an Evo 8. It was an FQ300, and I stupidly bought it brand spanking new. So I had to wait a year for the Evo 8 because the 7 was out at the time, and they convinced me that the 8 was going to be the last model that they ever made. So yeah, I put it down at a deposit. I had to wait a year for it, and they only made 1,000 as like a test run to see how they went. And I had number 33 of 1,000. It was there on a little plaque by the steering wheel, by the gear stick. And oh man, I love that car as well to bits. I used to wash it every weekend religiously, blah blah blah. So I waited a year for the car, and it lasted 9 months. I had a little bit of a mad driving session, and it ended with me collapsing 4 railings along a pavement, and the whole front end of the car disintegrating, and 23.5 grand's worth of damage. So in between the Evos, I had 3 Subarus. I had a 2000, was it 2000? It was a 99.9 UK turbo, a green one, which was fine, I had no problems with at all. I had a 2001 Bug-Eye, which was, I don't know what it was about the bug. It didn't really do it for me. And I also had a 96 Classic, and I had nothing but problems with that one. It got stolen, believe it or not, and you're going to find this hard to believe. It got stolen 3 times, and I got it back 3 times. Unbelievable. So after the 3rd time it got stolen, I said, right, enough's enough. So I chopped it in, and I basically got more money for it selling it in parts than what I paid for the car. And that kind of put me off, like the Subaru things, you know, after that one got stolen 3 bloody times. I also had a GT4 Celica, which was a brilliant car. I absolutely loved it. I had a WRC version, and that car did surprise a lot of people as well. And I had it for about a year. It was a year of good solid motoring until the bottom end let go. So yeah, again, that was another car that I stripped down into parts, and I got more for it in parts than what I paid for it as a whole car. But it was a cracking car. I did like it. I've also parlayed with a couple of Skylines, an R33 GTS, which is like a rear-wheel drive one, and also had a 33 GTR. But at the time, I just couldn't justify the running costs on them, because the job I was in at the time, the money wasn't great. I'm paying £25 a day, because they were my daily drivers, paying £25 a day in fuel, numbers just didn't add up, so they had to go. But the GTR was it was a cracker. It was a single turbo conversion, running about 550 horsepower, and it was a beast. So up until the beginning of this year, I also had a Mazda 3 MPS, the Mark 1 version, and that is a very underestimated car, because I tell you what, with a few mods and all that, oh my gosh. So the cars in the future, I've still got a couple of cars left on my bucket list. They include the Mazda RX-7 and 2JZ Supra. I'm still contemplating whether to get one of those. I'm due a new car. Well, I'm going to get a new car at some point in the middle of next year, and they're up there on my list. But I'm also thinking I might get a Golf R. I hope you enjoyed a little rundown of my car history. Let me know what your top 5 cars are, guys, in the comments down below, and let me know what you think about the cars that I've reeled off to you that I've owned. So a lot of you might be thinking, well, how has he managed to own so many cars when he looks so young, fresh and green? Well, I'm not as young as I look, but hey, you know, thank you for the compliments. But and I do average I do average about 3 cars a year, and I have averaged, I should say, I have averaged about 3 cars a year. So yeah, that's how I've managed to own so many cars. So hopefully I'll have a review up for you next week, but until then, travel safe and peace out.
Yeah, hey yo, I'm feeling blessed. Now sit back and observe days I used to ride bikes, pegs in the curve, swerve through traffic, headphones on with Stillmatic. I'm lyrically inclined, push balls like I'm lifting